and welcome to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiaga, live today on Tuesday, June the 4th. I have another round of great stories to get into on today's episode, starting with Tyreek Hill. With all the wide receivers getting a new contract, he sort of set the benchmark a couple of years ago with his massive deal that reset the market. Now, after Justin Jefferson got his deal, he is reportedly looking for a new deal of his own. Plus, we're going to get into some more AFC East rankings on the receiver groups. So, we're going to be talking Patriots, Bills, Jets, and Dolphins as well. So, stick around for that. And also, floating around the idea of London maybe being one of the hosts for a Super Bowl in the near future. The international game is growing a lot more with the NFL, but could this ever be a true possibility? I'll get into that later in the show. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast as well. And also, as a reminder, if you have any questions or comments, please use the tip and donations link you see on your screen, GSMCpodcast.net. By using this link, I can see your question or comment pop up in my chat box, and that way I can answer it and read it on air and just get your guys' thoughts on anything I say or on any of the topics we have on hand on today's show. It's a massive help for this show as well as the network, so please, if you would, use the tip and donations link, GSMCpodcast.net. But in saying that, we will get into that first topic. A lot of wide receiver talk recently. Tyreek Hill does not fall far from all those news that are coming out, and specifically with the Dolphins as well. The deal that got Justin Jefferson that massive contract with the Minnesota Vikings reset the entire market, but that didn't fall, too far off from what Jalen Waddle got recently. He just got a new contract from the Miami Dolphins that paid him $84.75 million total, and that averages around $28 million, give or take a few. $1,000 as well. So he's making around $28 million per year, in the top 5 of the highest paid annual salaries. So the Dolphins just came off of dishing out a pretty lucrative deal to one of their wide receivers already after giving Tyreek Hill one of the highest paid contracts also as well a couple years ago. But now Hill has been, already on that massive deal like I mentioned. I think he's been on it for a year or two now, and he is still currently one of the top 5 highest paid wide receivers, and he just turned 30 in March. And according to recent reports around the Dolphins and after the news of Justin Jefferson's deal, it has been reported that Tyreek Hill has been looking for a new contract since the end of this past season in 2023, the 2023 season. Why, you might ask? Well, that's where the detailed intricacies of this contract sort of come into play, because his $30 million per year isn't necessarily accurate or real, I guess you could say, for a lack of better terms, because I was reading an article and I saw that Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk sort of explained the contract and sort of broke it down a little bit more in that article, and I sort of wrote it down here and also had it on as a graphic to sort of show you guys how it breaks down and how we get to that $30 million per year mark, but not necessarily actually pay him that each and every year. So what I mean by that, as you guys can see on your screen as well, how it reaches the $30 million per year mark is because of the huge compensation you see there in the last year of his deal in 2026. If you see there down at the bottom of the screen, his base salary is supposed to be around $44 million or $43.9 million per year, or in that year actually, just in 2026, as that base salary with a $1 million roster bonus. So that, you average that out with the other salaries that he gets, and then you get to that $30 million per year mark, just based on how that last year sort of boosted all the way up to 30, when in reality, if you were to take away that last year of his deal from the 4-year, $120 million total deal that he received, Hill would actually be on a 3-year, $75 million deal with an average of about $25 million per year. And you sort of see how that rounds out a little bit, really being around that $25 million per year mark, being his salary each and every year of his contract. So the signing bonus he got on the first year of his deal, $25.5 million. Then the base salary was only $1 million, so around $26 million, all fully base salary of 16. So again, $26 million as a total salary for that year. Again, all fully guaranteed. And then this year, there's no bonus, there's no nothing, and he's only supposed to make about $19.6 million per year, or just on that year, in this year in 2024, as that base salary. It is fully guaranteed, but just not at the level where you would think $30 million is his average. He's actually making $10 million less than that this year. And also, if you look at it, just keep going down in 2025. Again, base salary of about $21 million per year, and then the roster bonus of another million. And if you were to get to 2026, that's when he would receive a massive salary in that year, and that's how it all averages to make it $30 million per year. Because of the other salaries that are actually below it, it doesn't actually reach it if you look at it and break it down like I'm showing you there on the screen. So that's really the main focus as to why Tyreek Hill wants to really trying to get, I guess, more security is the word from his contract, and get more guaranteed, or just a higher pay based on that. Maybe spread it out a little bit more over the years, and that way actually make close to $30 million per year, not just have it as a facade a little bit, just waiting for that last year to get a massive compensation from the Miami Dolphins. But also taking into account what Amon-Ra St. Brown received, A.J. Brown as well with their new contracts, and not to mention, obviously, Justin Jefferson. You see that and how their contracts break down, and how it is a lot closer to that $30 million per year mark. And if you're Tyreek Hill, you're definitely not shying away from thinking that they deserve it more than you do. He's been unbelievable these last few years, Tyreek Hill has, and he's only turning 30, so to think that he's going to slow down anytime soon, I don't think is probably accurate, just because his game just very much translates into the later parts of the years. And so far, recently in the NFL in 2023, he led the league in receiving yards at nearly 1,800 yards. He also led the league in receiving touchdowns with 13, and it's the first player in NFL history to record multiple seasons of over 1,700 yards. So this guy, among the elite wide receivers in the league, and I don't think anybody, if he were to get his deal restructured closer to that $30 million per year mark, I don't think anybody would say that he really doesn't deserve it. You saw the impact he made with the Chiefs, and now how massive of a factor he is with the Miami Dolphins. It makes sense that Tyreek Hill wants this deal, but then on the other side, how likely is it also, one more point before I move on, how likely is it, we're in 2024 now, how likely is it that the Dolphins and Tyreek make it to that last year without having these reconstruction talks with his contract, and maybe getting him to lower that value down? Realistically, to play it all the way out and get to 2026 seems unlikely, just because the Dolphins don't want to pay him $44 million just in that year. So it obviously would mean that they're going to restructure it and get him to lower that a little bit for salary cap purposes. So that's another reason why Tyreek Hill would probably not be ideally looking to do that. So again, he is now focusing on his contract now to sort of get more stability and security heading into this year, especially because, as you see, in 2024, supposed to make just under $20 million this year. Not necessarily accurate, and shows how much he really means to this team. And now you get into the question of, you extend Jalen Waddle, you have Tyreek under contract, but he wants another pay raise or just some more security with his deal. Where does that leave Tua? The reports coming out is that the Dolphins and Tua expect to get a contract extension done this summer, but the order of how that gets done, that's what really interests me at this point, because Tyreek is probably the most important player on that team. So do you prioritize him and sort his contract out before you get to Tua, just because there is more questions around him, and can he stay healthy? Is he really the guy going forward? He only had one good season this past year. I think it's been enough for him, but how the Dolphins work that out with Tyreek Hill sort of now pushing the Dolphins a little bit more to get the contract done. Maybe they don't like that pressure and they sort of give into that and hold off the contract negotiations with Tua, and maybe does that affect how much money Tua gets as well, if they're trying to allocate some more over to Tyreek Hill. But then another thing you have to think about is, I'm pretty confident in Tyreek Hill going into his 30s and continuing that on, but Are the Dolphins, pretty secure with him playing into 32 years old by the end of his current contract to maybe extend him or extend the pay of his deal over these next few years? Do they feel confident that he can continue this level of production by 32, 33 years old? That's something else to consider if you're the Dolphins. You don't want to, make a decision based on not hoping for injuries, but that is a factor that does play into it as well. And just the idea of the quarterback being the most important position, obviously, in football. Does that go into factoring in deciding if Tua goes first or if Tyreek Hill goes first, and how they sort out these contract negotiations? Because it is a tough situation that they find themselves in now, to build a competitive team and have two of the top five highest paid wide receivers and a quarterback that is expected to pay, I don't know, probably north of 45, maybe close to $50 million if you're Tua and trying to work out a long-term deal for yourself with the Dolphins. It is hard to manage all those massive contracts. It is similar to the Bengals with T. Higgins, Jamar, and Joe Burrow. It just doesn't seem likely. So following this situation closely over the next few days and how the Dolphins prioritize Tyreek Hill first or Tua will be very telling and very interesting just overall to follow. Tua and Tyreek aren't really skipping out on OTAs or mandatory minicamps, so you don't really have to worry about that aspect too much, but going forward, how they balance their books and their money will be something to take note of as well. But that is where it stands right now with Tyreek Hill and how the Dolphins are sort of trying to figure this whole situation out with him. But we'll leave that there, and in the meantime, we're going to go into our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to stay closely to the AFC East and rank their receiving groups when we come back. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't no place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Continuing on with the show here now, we're going to get into some AFC East wide receiver rankings that I have pulled up here. Last time we talked about the AFC North, and now we move down a division to the AFC East, talking about the Bills and their new wide receiver group, the Miami Dolphins adding Odell Beckham Jr., the Jets with all the new weapons as well on the offensive side, where do they fit it, and also the Patriots, not excluding them, and all the new weapons that they have in the quarterback play. How do they all rank in my power rankings this episode? Well, we're going to get into it right away, and starting at number 4, we have those New England Patriots falling from grace a little bit here, with just looking back 4 years ago, how they were close to the mountaintop, how close they were to, just being near the top, the elite of the elite, and now where they find themselves now. It's very odd and very uncharted territories for, I'm sure, these fans and how they expect this team to play, and it all really stems from the offensive side of the ball. Very new group and a very young group as well. Really led by these three guys here, Kendrick Bourne, Juju Smith-Schuster, and KJ Osborne, also who they signed in free agency. They really have a lot of options when it comes to who they're throwing the ball to and who they want to make plays out there. These three guys, along with Demario Douglas, rookie Jalen Polk, Jalen Reagor, Keyshawn Boutte, and Tyquan Thornton. They have a lot of names and a lot of depth at that position, but how dependable and how consistent can those options be. I think the most consistent option that you have right now is probably Kendrick Bourne. I was pretty impressed with him the last season that he had. He did get injured, but also just leading up to that, he did seem like the most fluid and solid option that they have. But is he really the bona fide number one receiver that you would really want? That's sort of where you get to Juju Smith-Schuster. He was signed to the Patriots, and sort of after moving around a little bit, could he really now blossom into that number one wide receiver position and into that role for this young team? Again, another question mark if Juju could really do that. There are some question marks even still if he will continue on the team as well recently coming up. So that's something to monitor. And also KJ Osborne, another one of those options. Solid with the Minnesota Vikings, but again, can you trust him to do it on his own? Did he really benefit a lot from Justin Jefferson and benefiting from the lack of attention on him and really blossoming into that role? Can he now come and carry that over into the New England Patriots? It all has to do with them, obviously, and their skill set, but now you look at the quarterback situation that the Patriots find themselves in. Maybe not yet into the Drake May era, but you would expect it to be at least somewhat better than it was last year with Bailey Zappi, Mac Jones, and that whole situation was just not pretty or efficient by any means. So it's hard to think that that could get worse. So you do have some hope for this group to really, finally produce into something that you can really be proud of and be dependent on going forward, because the running game, it seems like to be the most reliable option that they have at this point. It seems pretty efficient, but you have to get some dynamic play out of these guys. There is some potential there, a lot of young guys, but at the same time, do you have to monitor the expectations with that group and maybe, just maybe, look towards the future and maybe still look out for that number one really talented wide receiver that you will eventually get on your team for Drake May. But that is the fourth team on my list, the New England Patriots, which means at number 3 I have the Buffalo Bills. Maybe a bit of a surprise here because the Bills just lost their best receiver in recent years in Stephon Diggs, obviously trading him to the Houston Texans, and now they're left with a pretty young team, young receiver group of their own, really led by Dawson Knox, who you see there on your left. One of the oldest guys on this team and one of the guys to really catch a pass from Josh Allen in a regular season game, along with Khalil Shakir, who is still on the team. And then you get into the other guys, the younger guys who I have, pictured in there as the main targets, who I expect to really elevate themselves in Stephon Diggs' absence. The middle guy there, Keon Coleman, the rookie receiver out of Florida State. I expect him to really blossom into that wide receiver role. He has all the tools to do it. It's going to take some transition, obviously, but I really like him and what he could bring to this team. And also Dalton Kincaid had a very impressive year last year as a rookie. Really developed a great connection with Josh Allen and how offensive coordinator Joe Brady really runs things over there, now sort of basing it off of the run. I think this could be very beneficial for the Bills if they continue to just go down this avenue of running the ball a bit more with Josh Allen or with James Cook. You get into more 12 personnel, and you might not have the eye-popping names like a Stephon Diggs or these other weapons that these other teams have around the league, but if you just strategize it well and game plan it for it accordingly, I think they could have a lot of success. They had a lot of success last year. Obviously, you had Stephon Diggs, but he really wasn't Stephon Diggs towards the end of the year. He didn't record a 100-yard game, I think, after week 6 or week 8. After that, it was really mostly a tight end show, a running game show, and I think now they have more willing guys to do that and more willing guys to play for the team. That's really the message that Joe Brady is emphasizing now, that this offense sort of identifies themselves as. All the guys are going to get a piece of the pie, and if they share it accordingly and this works efficiently and they execute on these plays, I think along with these 3 guys, you have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's solid, Curtis Samuel as well, KJ Hamler, Matt Collins. Not, again, the most eye-popping names, but they certainly can contribute something if you scheme for it very well and control the game with the running game more so than not. Keon Coleman is probably the guy that has the most potential to do that, and if you can really get him to develop quickly, then that's even better for you. But to monitor the expectations here a little bit, I think is warranted, and to have him at 3rd and not 4th, where most people would probably have him, I think is something to keep an eye on, and how this team could be sneaky good with Josh Allen, obviously, at quarterback. Always gives you a good chance to still be one of the top offenses, at least in your division. But at number 2, moving on, would be the New York Jets. Very exciting offseason for them this year. Obviously, an offensive group led by that man on your left, Garrett Wilson, the third-year wide receiver now, I want to say, if my memory serves me right, leading this offense now that you add Mike Williams to in the middle there. You have to monitor how he is with health, but a very good number 2 option there for the New York Jets. And also Xavier Gibson, maybe not the most well-known name, but making a lot of plays in OTAs, and I think he has a good chance of stepping into that wide receiver 3 role for the New York Jets. And also, behind those 3 guys, you have young guys like Malachi Corley, Alan Lazard, if he could contribute a little bit more. Not in the best of spots with New York Jets fan bases and how much he has contributed recently, but he has that great connection with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he could step it up. And if you can get even more than you did from him this year, it'll only be even better now because you have more options to not have to defer to Alan Lazard, which he could be in a spot where that just isn't his role anymore, but now at least you have better options. Garrett Wilson maturing into that wide receiver 1. Mike Williams hopefully staying healthy. Those 2 guys will probably get the majority of the attention anyway, and Alan Lazard could probably benefit off of that even more. And also in terms of versatility and what each of them can bring, Garrett Wilson pretty much can do everything. You have Mike Williams as a deep ball, big body, contested catch wide receiver, and also Xavier Gibson working out of the slot, capable of doing it outside, but really blossoming and really being as efficient as he can be in the slot, operating the middle of the field. You have a lot of different abilities you could use on this offense for Aaron Rodgers as well. Getting a little bit older, but surrounding him with so much talent, I think it is an exciting time for the New York Jets fan base, and having all these great options that you can really play off of. And also Breece Hall there carrying the rock out of the backfield. I do know that is the running game, but also getting involved that way and opening up the passing game, I think could be a very, very beneficial thing for the New York Jets this year. And there is a lot of pressure on them, but now I think they're definitely more equipped to do something with that pressure and not have the wheels fall off in the first couple of weeks. And then, Aaron Rodgers said it best. If he doesn't perform, if this team doesn't perform again after last season, most of them are probably gone anyway, and they're going to have to sort of rebuild this thing from the bottom up. So a lot of pressure, but now definitely better equipped to handle that and execute at a higher level. So they're at number 2, which means obviously only one team left. The Miami Dolphins are my number 1 receiver group in this division in the AFC East, just mainly because I believe they have 2 number 1s. Tyreek Hill obviously goes without saying, and Jalen Waddle quietly being one of the most underrated receivers, I think, could be a number 1 on any of these teams in the AFC East and also just around the league as well. Has recorded a 1,000-yard season in each of his 3 years in the NFL, got paid accordingly as to how well he has produced on the field. And then those 2 guys already had been pretty successful with this offense, and the Miami Dolphins benefiting off of these 2 guys, but they really now needed somebody else to sort of step up, because when you get to the playoffs, as you saw this past year, teams really focus in on getting rid of those 2 guys, not having them break the game open for the Miami Dolphins. And that's where maybe some people will have their doubts around that man in the middle there, OBJ, and how much he could really contribute. But I think his time with the Baltimore Ravens didn't really paint him in the best of light. It just didn't fit for me. I didn't think his skill set and what he could bring to the table really was what the Baltimore Ravens needed. Yeah, he had some solid games and some solid contributions here or there, but he did suffer with injuries, and now, again, not something that really boosts his chances of people being confident in him and how much he can contribute. But I think now, whereas with the Baltimore Ravens, you have a rookie in Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews is a tight end, so really not truly gaining too much attention or being as much of a threat to opposing defenses. He was sort of looked at as a guy to be a very good number 2 and maybe a little bit of a number 1 and a teacher for Zay Flowers in Baltimore. Now, in Miami, he's not really expected to be that at all. They already have 2 number 1s that could pretty much do everything. go deep, work the middle of the field, short routes, screen plays, just quick throws as well. Those two guys can bring so much to the table that OBJ doesn't really have to do much and can just really blossom in what he does best. Beating corners one-on-one, maybe moving or all over this offense could be something that, again, benefits him with all the manipulation that the Dolphins do before the snap of the ball. All of that can really benefit OBJ, and I think he is in for a good year this year to surprise a lot of people and prove the doubters wrong because, again, he doesn't have to be that main option, and behind him, maybe not the most eye-catching names, but they are so top-heavy, the Miami Dolphins, that I think they could, handle that with guys like Durham Smythe, Jonnu Smith, Braxton Berrios as depth options. They have to just remain consistent and maybe get a little bit more from those guys, but overall, I think they have too much talent at the top to not be on or in my number one spot in these AFC East divisional rankings for the receiver group. So again, as always, let me know what you guys think of my rankings. Do you guys have confidence in the Dolphins being that number one receiver group in this division? Do you think the Bills should be a little bit higher? Or the Jets, or are you not just buying into the Jets hype for this 2024 season? Leave your thoughts in the chat box during the live episode or also in the comments section after the show has concluded. But in saying that, we will move on with the rest of the show, going into a quick break now, and when we return, getting into that story on London wanting to host a Super Bowl. How does the NFL feel about that? And is it possible with all the history around the Super Bowl, obviously, how important it is to the United States? Is it possible sometime in the near future? I'll get into those details when we return, so we'll be right back after this break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Moving right along with the rest of the show and into our next topic on more of international talk with the NFL, them obviously growing their global footprint over the last few years, now traveling to South America for the first time, again, some more Germany games, some more London games, and some big plans heading into 2025 and afterwards to play games in Spain, maybe Australia. Italy's been thrown out there. Why not the Middle East if everything is sort of being played over there recently to gain that much more attention on the game of football? A lot of different options for the NFL, but regular season games are one thing. I think fans can really just accept that. They can swallow that pill and just get by with it. Yeah, sure, we're going to have to wake up a few hours earlier than we'd like to watch maybe our favorite team play, but it isn't the Super Bowl, right? It isn't the biggest game, arguably, in sports currently, in the United States at least. Pretty much its own holiday. Everybody tunes into the Super Bowl, even though there is no day off afterwards. That's a separate conversation, though, with the 18-game regular season. But the Super Bowl, is there any chance that London, of all places, could host the Super Bowl in the near future? Well, their mayor, Sadiq Khan, recently revealed last week that he's hoping to try and convince the NFL to try and put a future Super Bowl in their city, based on the history and the connections that London has with the NFL and having so many games be played there. But we're talking about the Super Bowl here, right? 58 Super Bowls and counting really have been played in the United States, obviously with more Super Bowls already scheduled through 2028, 2027 at least. So this is an idea that's being floated around now more and more. The international games are going to grow from now that there is 5, if my memory serves me right, to about 7 or 8 per year with the new ruling from the NFL owners in December to increase the amount of international games. It is something that is in the works, but like I said, London Mayor Sadiq Khan mentioned it in a statement to The Athletic last week, to which he said specifically in this graphic that I have there, I see on your screen. He said the Super Bowl is really important for us. We have a number of American football games, and I want it to come here because we want American sports fans in Europe to come to London to watch them, not just go to America for obviously one of the biggest sporting spectacles in current sports and all sports really at the moment. How big the Super Bowl is, how many viewers it gets. It is, logical that London would want such a massive event to be held there. Why their mayor would want all the fans and all the attention to come over to London. They have the facilities, obviously, to host an NFL game. They've hosted numerous ones over the years. Specifically, I want to say London has hosted 36 regular season games since 2007. Definitely the most in that time period. So, is this really impossible for it to happen? I would probably incline myself to say, yeah, closer to that, because I feel like the Super Bowl is such a sacred thing for the United States, and just the issues and the hurdles you'd have to jump over are really the time difference and how to schedule around that. London is 5 hours ahead of Eastern time, so it's 8 hours ahead of Pacific time as well. So that would mean that the game in London could have a realistic start of around 9 p.m. for it to make the most sense to start at 4 p.m. over here on the Eastern at the Eastern time zone, and at 1 p.m. on the Pacific time zone. So is that something that the United States and people, living in those time zones would really want to see? I think it takes away from it a little bit. Maybe Pacific time, when the game is scheduled for 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock over here in the Eastern time zone. Maybe people in the Pacific time could accept it starting at around 4 or around 5 o'clock, but for it to start at 1, I think, again, takes away from some of that attraction from it. You have to get up earlier, see the game at around noon, and it wouldn't really feel like a Super Bowl is what I'm trying to really get at, with it being taken out of the habitual really pattern that it has been following over the last few seasons. Even in the Eastern time, for it to start at 4 p.m., there hasn't been a Super Bowl to start at 4 p.m. since Super Bowl 16 between the 49ers and the Bengals. That was also the highest rated Super Bowl in NFL history, but last year's Super Bowl actually got the most viewers in TV history with 123.4 million views, but only a 42.1 rating compared to the 49.1 rating that Super Bowl 16 had. So, again, that sort of implies that this could work in terms of ratings and having it be one of the higher rated ones. But, again, I think it's just too sacred right now to really think about it being a true possibility. But Roger Goodell was also asked about it back at a fan forum in London back in October. And Goodell was asked about the possibility of the Super Bowl maybe being held in London, to which he said, it's not impossible, and it is something that has been discussed before. I think that is not out of the question, but at the end of the day, I think right now our formula will stay the same about playing Super Bowls in cities that have franchises in it, and obviously London doesn't have that, even though they've hosted the Jaguars a number of times, and they're basically the home team for London. They technically don't have a franchise there, and also hosting a Super Bowl does have massive economic benefits for the city that it is hosted in. So obviously the United States, the city in America, would want those benefits there and to benefit off of the game that has been in the United States for really all of its history. To have it in London and give up those benefits, I think wouldn't sit well with some fans. And again, just from the player side and the time and everything, I don't think it would be received well. And you parlay it with all the changes that already all the fans have to sort of accept with the NFL trying to grow more globally, having more international games, different streaming sites. I think it would be too much of a change for fans to really accept. Now, I do know it's not going to happen in 4 years, 3 years, because the Super Bowls already have been planned through 2028. But I don't think fans and just people in general in the United States would be pretty happy about it. But again, I do acknowledge the fact that the NFL isn't really going off of what fans think too much. If it makes sense for them revenue wise and growing the game that much more and, building something off of that, I think they would probably pull the trigger on it. But I don't see it happening probably realistically until after 2030, after some new broadcasting and streaming deals, maybe a new CBA and sort of working through that. Maybe after that you can sort of explore this opportunity, but is it really the best place to have it, in London? I can see it why it would make the most sense. NFL games have been played there the most, but, you have other cities out there like France, in Paris, France actually, maybe somewhere in Spain, or maybe the Middle East as well. That's been the host of a lot of massive sporting events, so those could be thrown around maybe a little bit more later when this possibility of hosting a Super Bowl in foreign territory would be something more likely. But for right now, I think it's just being talked about as an idea maybe. Roger Goodell doesn't seem too convinced about it, but it seems anything he says recently about an 18-game regular season or now a Super Bowl being held elsewhere, it seems like these things just tend to eventually happen and gain more traction over the course of time. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, but again, going forward, I don't think it will be too soon to really make it something that could legitimately happen in the years to come. And one idea that came across my mind when I was thinking about this, and this idea of growing the game and having the NFL be a true global game, because for right now I think football and the NFL has really been an American sport that people elsewhere look at it and aren't really too familiar with it. Yeah, when it comes to their cities, when it comes to Europe or South America now, yeah, they'll get up for it as something different to go and watch, but truly, I don't think it is a global game, like really compared to soccer would be the best example. And if you think of some of the biggest sporting events in the world of soccer, you have obviously the World Cup and the Champions League as another one to bring in some examples. The idea of soccer being the global game, the world's game, not just being limited to one country like the United States is with football, I think that's the difference in how big soccer is and how big football is in terms of the world viewing it and how much people all over the world tune into these games. Because the Super Bowl, I guess you could sort of compare it to the World Cup and even so to the Champions League a little bit, and the finals, the Super Bowls of these competitions, so to say, are held in various different locations across the world, or at least across Europe, and across Europe, or just across the world also with the World Cup. World Cup's been held in Brazil, also in Mexico, the United States, in some European cities as well, and some European countries as well. So that really gets to travel all over the world and bring its notoriety and popularity to these different areas across the map, whereas the Super Bowl and American football isn't really that diverse because their main attraction, their main World Cup or their main Champions League finals always held just within their country, and you can't have a lot of fans from across the globe come and try to learn more about the sport if you just keep it towards the United States. So if the NFL really wants to make this a global game and really grow it to the level of soccer with some of these major events that are going on with the Champions League and even the World Cup, I think they're going to have to go this route and maybe host the Super Bowl in different countries. But it is just a game of give or take, really, because you don't want to lose the home fans as well and have them think that it's all about money with the Super Bowl or with the NFL. You want to still keep them engaged and want them to still be loyal to the game, but also it is something that does come across the mind of the NFL and really making this a world sport compared to soccer and some of the other sports. I guess tennis you could throw out there as well, and some of these other global sports that come to different countries. The NFL is definitely capable and it is massive enough to do that, but so far they haven't really shown it by keeping the Super Bowl to the domestic territories in their own cities. It will be something to watch as well going forward, but again, probably not something that'll happen relatively soon, but it is fun to think about where it could happen, and I would probably guess London would be the first one, and if it goes well, maybe we could explore other places. But right now, the NFL is in that experimental phase of trying different cities out, seeing if they could hold an NFL game in an NFL capacity crowd. It is going well so far, but again, nothing too concrete as we sit here and talk about it. But that'll do it for that segment and this topic. We're going to go into another quick break, and when we return, two more stories to talk about. The post June 1st designation salary boost, those are coming in to a couple of teams around the NFL. I'll tell you if they got a boost and who they benefited off after the release of some of these players. And also the idea of the New York Giants and their head coach Brian Daboll. He was hired as a play caller from the Buffalo Bills. Hasn't really done that so far with the Giants. Is it now the time to do that with maybe his job being at stake in 2024? Stick around to talk about those topics after the break. We'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Back here now on the show to move on with the next topic at hand. We are now into June and into this period of post-June 1st designated salary cuts or salary bonuses that teams receive from their designated roster cuts before. A little bit of context as to what I'm talking about if you have no idea what that means. Before the 2006 revision of the NFL CBA, teams that cut a player before June 1st actually had to take full remaining responsibility of the cap acceleration immediately. So they would mean that they would have to pay off those dues to the player right away in that year. And it resulted in a lot of teams just keeping those players after June and sort of having this mini free agent period, a second free agent period in June where teams would have to keep players after free agency, that first wave in March, and then after June 1st, they get to cut them because of that designation to pay them right away. Teams obviously didn't want to do that at the time, so it created this mini version of free agency again in June to where a lot of players were cut, and it sort of started this massive wave of having another free agency period in June. But now, as of 2006 and that CBA, once it was revised, now teams are able to release players or up to 2 players before June 1st, but with that designation of having it be a post-June 1st cut and a post-June 1st designation on the salary. So that would mean that the player would be wiped from the roster, but their base salary for that year remains on the books for salary cap purposes, obviously, until June 2nd, and they would also be able to spread out the dead money hit into this year and also into the following year rather than having to be responsible for a huge dead money charge in that year if they were to cut it. That was revised with the new CBA, and I think it works out better now. Yeah, there might not be another free agency period, after June 1st, so that excitement is gone a little bit, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it has worked out better for the NFL teams as of now. And with these post-June 1st cuts, 11 teams have received some bonuses because of that, because of those designated cuts that they made. The Arizona Cardinals released DJ Humphries with that designation of the post-June 1st cut. So their dead money charge will be split up into $13 million this year and about $7 million in 2025, but they will save about $16 million this year as one of the most notable ones. Also, the Baltimore Ravens with Odell Beckham Jr. not saving too much. Their bonus this year for that post-June 1st designation will only be around $1.2 million, and for them, it'll be around $10 million in dead money that they're going to have to split between this year and next year. Also, Other teams that were pretty notable, that got pretty big chunks of bonuses because of these designations, were the Buffalo Bills, saving around $10.2 million with their post-June 1st designation release of Tre'Davious White. He now is with the Los Angeles Rams, and that can finally be, transitioned into being official now, and he'll be on the Rams, but the Buffalo Bills will have to pay off his dead money charge, $6 million in 2024 and also $4 million in 2025, but they save a good amount of money from doing so. The Dallas Cowboys, as another one, by releasing Michael Gallup, their dead money charge is $13 million spread over 2 years, so again, isn't really too bad for them this year to take it up this year, and they save about $9.5 million in 2024. And also another one that maybe isn't as beneficial, probably the worst one actually, is Denver. With quarterback Russell Wilson, he technically was a post-June 1st designated release, but the dead money charge on him is exponential. It's massive for what the Denver Broncos have to pay. $53 million of a dead money charge in 2024 and another $32 million in 2025. And on top of that, they have no money saved. They will receive no boost this year like the Cowboys, the Ravens, or the Cardinals have. It is probably the worst situation to be in, and that's why Denver is so handicapped this offseason to really improve their team, and they're going to have to swallow those massive hits this year and next year before they really get into a period where they can try and build this team up even more and get into a healthy salary cap situation with their team. But that is without a doubt the worst one. Another one that's pretty beneficial on how it all worked out is with the Las Vegas Raiders. With quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo and the possible suspension that he will be dealt with and will be handed out to him from the NFL for performance-enhancing drugs, allegedly, would be a dead money charge that would have been $28 million per year, but was reduced to around $17 million per year to be spread out over 2 years. So they get that reduction because of the suspension. They don't have to pay off the guaranteed money that they owe him because, again, of that suspension. And now they save about $24 million this year from that post-June 1st designation that they had on Jimmy Garoppolo. So very fortunate there for the Raiders. Don't have a very solid quarterback after that, but they don't have to pay Jimmy Garoppolo a lot of money, basically, with those reductions because of his suspension and because of the designation of June 1st. And also, lastly, around here, another team that received a big chunk of money from the salary cap in a boost this year would be the San Francisco 49ers by releasing Eric Armstead. It was a massive loss, obviously, for them because of how much he's meant to them, but they will have to take up a dead money charge of $10 million in 2024 and another $15 in 2025. But they will save about $18 million this season, and with that savable amount, it brings their salary cap situation this year to about $24 to $25 million this year. So it is so beneficial because they obviously have to get those negotiations done with Brandon Ayuk. You don't want to lose him. And now with this boost coming in from the release of Eric Armstead, you can sort of have more room now to work that out, or maybe trade Brandon Ayuk and get some more benefits after that as well with having him offer your books. Things to consider there with the San Francisco 49ers. They at least now have a better chance of doing it, but they did have to lose Eric Armstead and a massive piece to their defense. So with that being said, from the list that I just gave, which team sort of benefited the most with this cap situation and getting that uptick in a bit of extra money from these post-June 1st designations? I would probably have to say it is tough. I want to say the 49ers or the Raiders just because they got a good amount of money and they're not really handicapped too badly after their designation like the Saints or the or Baltimore, who didn't really get a decent amount back from Odell Beckham Jr. There's also Miami with the post-June 1st designation release of Xavier Howard. They save about $18.5 million this year and only a dead money charge of $7.4 million. So they're another one that benefited a lot from that designation. But I would probably give it to the 49ers, just because they now have a bigger possibility of extending Brandon Ayuk if that's a route that they want to go. Is it enough to pay him now 30 or up to north of $30 million per year after the wide receiver market was sort of reset? That's a different question. That's a different realm of possibility for the 49ers if they still aren't able to do that. But at least now they have a better chance of doing it. And of course, you have to trade off Eric Armstead, but at the same time, I think that is much needed because next year they're going to be over the salary cap by a good amount, and they have more negotiations to get to with Brock Purdy and other massive pieces to their roster as well in 2025. So this has helped them, I believe, the most to stay near the top of the mountain in the NFC. They obviously want to continue with this roster, or the majority of it, and working around the salary cap will be probably their biggest issue to try and get most of these guys extended, but they now have some more breathing room with this designation from Eric Armstead, and hopefully they benefit off of it. Hopefully they keep this team together, at least to win a Super Bowl. That's obviously the ultimate goal for this team that has been hanging around the rim but hasn't gotten that ball in the basket just yet. But those are some of the salary cap boosts that some of these teams receive because of these post-June 1st designated releases. Very beneficial to some, but unfortunately for others, not as beneficial as it might have seemed. But we're going to head into the last break of the show, and when we return, we're going to stick to the NFC East and talk some more about Brian Daboll, the head coach of the New York Giants, taking up now play calling responsibilities in 2024, with his job maybe being at stake now, with pressure being mounted on more and more after the seasons that he has had. Should he take the play calling responsibilities now to sort of save his job? I'll give you guys the details on that when we return in just a few seconds. Back here now on the show to get into the last segment of today's episode, talking about the New York Giants and what is really going on with them. Obviously, the quarterback situation isn't the best, and not too much has been really made of that since they didn't draft another quarterback in the draft, and there were rumors about it, but they evidently stuck with Daniel Jones and sort of trying to ride out his contract as of now. Maybe he impresses them again this year, but that is going to come down a lot to the play calling and how the offense looks now in 2024 compared to 2023, where the Giants offense was less than impressive, let's say, less than the standard you'd hope from the New York Giants and what their standard is over there in New York, a massive market, and how the fan expectations play into all of this. The fans want to see more, and hopefully the Giants get more out of this offense, because last year they ranked towards the bottom in a lot of categories. They ranked 29th in total yards, only mustering 4,760 total yards. Also, they ranked second to last in total passing yards with 2,886, and also in total points, ranking 30th in the NFL, only putting up 266 total points in 2023. A massive drop-off from 2022 in Brian Daboll's first year in the offense as the head coach, not the play caller on the offensive side of the ball, just the head coach, and they made it to the playoffs. They actually beat the Minnesota Vikings on the road before eventually losing to the Philadelphia Eagles, but that first year where it all looked new and, dare I say, dynamic and overly impressive for the New York Giants. Maybe a miracle that it looks so good, in all honesty, now in hindsight looking back on it. But it all looks so good to see it all just drop off now and sort of get a reality call after a year where it gave the New York Giants fan base a lot of hope with Brian Dable coming in. Now you have Daniel Jones in a situation where he did receive that massive contract, and you sit in a weird spot now where you have to make it work now because you're allocating so much money to Daniel Jones, and you decided on having him on the team essentially over Saquon Barkley and not paying him as well. Obviously, him saying he never received an offer from them, so that pretty much says it all on where their attention was with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. But how can they make the most and the best out of the situation now? Well, I think that falls into the hands of Brian Dable, because it's been about 2 to 3 years now where this New York Giants team, you've seen them at their highest, but then also mostly at their lowest in terms of offensive production. And Brian Dable was hired from the Buffalo Bills, where he was the play caller, where he was the offensive coordinator for that Bills team in that developmental period with Josh Allen, where you really saw him grow into the player that he is right now. Obviously, after Dable left, he continued that and really evolved into a top 3, top 5 quarterback in the NFL. But really, it was Brian Dable that sort of got that started and really got to tap into that great potential that Josh Allen has. And he really hasn't been calling plays at all since he came over to New York. He has designated those responsibilities to his offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka. He's been calling the plays since Brian Dable brought him along with him to New York. So now, in such a crucial period for the New York Giants, you have some more offensive firepower in Malik Nabers. This post-Saquon era, how is that going to look by losing one of the best players you've had in recent memory? How is this going to look? What can you change of this offense to try and, I guess, essentially save your job if you're Brian Dable? Because, again, if it doesn't work out, he could be one of the first people gone, along with maybe general manager Joe Schoen. How do you try and change that and get to that point? I will get to that after. Shout out to my man Eric for commenting again. He said, first time we're seeing Daniel Jones without Barkley leading the offense. Dable helped Josh run the offense without a dependable run game. So all we can do is hope. Yeah, that is a good point, Eric. And all we can do is hope at this point for them. But also, you make a great point with them not having such a reliable running game. Very similar now to what this New York Giants team is really dealing with now. And I think that more than ever really solidifies my point in all of this, is that Brian Dable, I think, really has no choice now to call the plays. And my expectation is for him to call the plays in 2024 just because of that resume that I just mentioned, and also that you mentioned there, Eric, as well. He did it already with Buffalo in a very similar situation, and now looking at your options and not really having too many in 2024 in such a crucial year for you to essentially save your job, I don't think you really have another option to do it. And it's not to say that it is all you have to do. I think Brian Dable is very capable and qualified to call these plays, and really it surprises me that he hasn't been calling the plays, in all honesty, since the time of getting here. But he obviously has confidence in his offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka. But now the idea was floated around, but now you're sort of starting to see it solidify a bit more in OTAs so far this spring and into the summer. Brian Dable mentioned back in March how calling the plays in 2024 was something that he was looking into more and more than in previous years. And now, during OTAs, through some footage you see from local media, he's been spotted with the walkie-talkie and now delivering the calls to the quarterbacks so far in OTAs. But he really hasn't solidified his position on calling plays thus far. People have seen him do it, but in his comments afterwards to address these, actions in OTAs, he said, "I've called plays for a long time, so it's good to get out here and practice and doing it. But there's a whole process that goes with it. There's training camp, there's OTAs, and I'll make that decision, like I said back in March, that I feel is best." Big expectations, like I mentioned, heading into 2024. So, it's funny that you see Brian Dable doing it now, and it is funny how these coaches sort of follow the same trends and patterns when their backs are really up against the wall when they have nothing else to do, because we've seen, or I feel that I've seen a lot of coaches do this that might be feeling a bit of pressure now coming into 2024, and they're sort of starting to take up more responsibility in play calling or in just a different aspect of the team. You saw it with Mike McCarthy. He did it last year after moving on from Kellen Moore. He took on the play calling responsibilities, and they had a great regular season. Unfortunate that they couldn't do it in the playoffs, but you saw it with Mike McCarthy. Pressure was on him to really deliver in that year. He took up the responsibilities, and now he earned himself another year. Some people might not think he deserved it, but who am I to make that determination? He's an example. Frank Reich did it as well when Carolina was struggling last year. He handed the responsibilities to his offensive coordinator. Then halfway through that losing streak, he took it back and started calling plays. It wasn't enough to save his job, but again, following in that trend of the head coach taking on more responsibility. And also now with Robert Saleh, not doing it on the defensive side where that is his area of expertise, but Aaron Rodgers and other local media in New York have said that Robert Saleh has been more involved in the offensive side of the ball, giving his ideas and his opinions. So again, just following the trend of these head coaches with pressure now on their back to deliver, starting to become more involved. And I think ultimately that's what Brian Daboll will do, and I think that's what he should do to get the most out of this team, because I think he is very qualified and very talented at doing so. And again, really just comes down to the point where if you want something done right, you have to go and try and do it yourself, at least to, put everything you have into this season. And then if it doesn't work out, then probably it wasn't meant to work out in the long run. But at least you gave the best shot at doing it, and at least you don't have these doubts afterwards with yourself, with the media constantly asking you, why didn't you do more, maybe calling plays in this year. Maybe that could have saved your job. It is something where the Giants find themselves now really looking for options, looking anywhere to try and get better results. It's beneficial that it can't get much worse with how badly they ranked last year in terms of stats. So Brian Daboll has expectations on him at the same time, but again, not too many because of what he's working with. I think it's an ideal situation for him now to come in, call the plays, and again, he could only do a better job than what was put out there on the field last year. It should result in better, outcomes for the New York Giants, but we need to see it actually play out there in the field in 2024 with Daniel Jones, Malik Neighbors, offensive line that's there, maybe not, and a defense that is pretty promising, but again, we have to see it in a pretty tough NFC East where it seems everybody else got better as well. So we're going to see where that lands with the New York Giants in 2024, but for right now, that will do it for this episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I want to thank you guys for tuning into today's episode, and also remind you guys to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as checking us out on other social medias like Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok for more of the network's content. If you want to see more of me and this show specifically, check out the GSMC Sports Network channel and the GSMC Podcast Network channel for all the live shows that are recorded and posted on both of those channels. YouTube Shorts are also posted daily as well, and individual segment videos. If you don't have time to watch an entire show and just want to tune in for a specific topic, all those are posted on both channels. And as a final reminder, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more football discussions and NFL conversation with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thank you guys for joining me once again, and I'll see you guys all back here with me tomorrow.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great.